It's Spencer Hughes, and Halloween is quickly approaching, although it seems like Halloween was 3 months ago. If you looked at the box stores, they started selling costumes a long time ago. But of course, with Halloween comes controversy, and with each passing year, it seems like there's more and more controversy, more and more political correctness, more and more people being offended by certain costumes. Look, I remember when we took Gingy into costume stores at a very young age, even, the mainstream ones I'm talking about, the chain ones that prop up in big, empty, vacated box stores, okay, like old Staples stores that have closed or things like that, and they become these Halloween stores, superstores. I remember when she was very young thinking, I don't want her looking at half this stuff. It's pretty bad, either really, really gory and violent and extreme, or very, very sexualized. Okay, even a lot of the like Disney type costumes sexualized, and I didn't like it. But I certainly didn't push to ban them. I certainly didn't write the companies saying they ought to get rid of these things, because I understand how the free market works. As long as there's people that want to dress up like a slutty Snow White, they're going to keep making slutty Snow White costumes. It's pretty much the way it is. Well, this year it looks like they're trying to go after the sexy Native American costumes. And there are dozens of them available if you were to Google them. There's an online petition. It's gotten nearly 13,000 signatures as of this podcast, and it's gaining momentum by the hour. And they're rallying against Yandy's sexy Native American costumes that are currently available for sale. And they have them for men, too, although, of course, for every male one, there's like 20 female ones, maybe. Twitter exploded last week with users frustrated with the online lingerie retailer's continued sale of 43 different sexy Native American and sexy Indian outfits, as they call them, despite rising backlash through a hashtag Cancel Yandy campaign. Now, this is from FoxNews.com. Days before the company pulled its sexy Handmaid's Tale-inspired costume, people were protesting that, saying that it symbolized women's oppression. Look, it's a TV series, for God's sakes, based on a book. And manufacturers are allowed to make any costume they want. If they want to make a costume of JFK with an exit wound in the back of the head, they're allowed to do that. And you're allowed to say, you know what, I don't want to dress up as an assassinated president for Halloween, because it's low taste, it's no taste, it's beneath me, and it's really grotesque and insulting to the Kennedy family, and I'm not going to do that. But you should be able to. Right? I mean, let's be honest here. I know some of you are around the world, but in America, at least, we should have the right, shouldn't we? If not in other places on this earth, to dress however grotesquely we want. I mean, Gingy dressed up once as a murder doll. I mean, which is a few years ago. We let her dress up as a murder doll with a bloody knife, and she cocked her head around, and she's like, "Hello, Mama. Hello, Daddy." And it was horrifying to a lot of people answering the doors. But you know what? It's Halloween, for God's sakes. And she was a kid, with our permission, obviously, with that costume. But what about grown women? If a grown woman wants to dress like a slutty Snow White, do we need to protest the costume manufacturers? How about women just choose to have more self-respect? How about guys choose to have more taste? How about guys choose to not be a piece of feces for Halloween, maybe? That would be nice. I mean, I would never even consider dressing up as a piece of poop, but people do it. So should we ban the costume? Should we pressure the manufacturers to stop making these things? Or do we just exercise a little bit of taste and good sensibility and a little bit of class? Well, maybe Halloween isn't about class. Maybe Halloween is about just letting go, as people say, and just being something that you can't ever be the other days of the year, even if that means dressing up like a slutty Native American, a slutty Disney character. I don't know. I mean, I wouldn't want my daughters dressing up like this. I wouldn't want your daughters dressing up like this. I would hope they'd have enough taste to not dress up like this. But people are going to make their own decisions. We can't have costume control in America. I mean, is that what we want? We want, it's gun control, gun control, gun control. Are we going to have costume control? What about people that make their own costumes? I mean, couldn't I just make a sexy Native American costume if I wanted to? Couldn't I just make a sexy fireman's outfit if I wanted to? Couldn't I just make a sexy Handmaid's Tale outfit if I wanted to? I mean, how are you going to stop people from going to costume parties dressed like this? Is that going to be the next thing? Not just pressuring the manufacturer of these things, but pressuring people to just not dress that way? Should we ban people from dressing like sexy Native Americans? I mean, what if you are a Native American dressed like this? I mean, are you going to get a pass? We'll give you a hall pass. If you're actually Native American, if you can prove that you have Native American blood, you should be able to dress any way you want. I mean, do you see how silly and ridiculous this whole thing gets? So again, I think parents need to exercise a little caution with their children. And Gingy's years ahead of her age. She always has been an old soul. And we kind of, in the beginning, it was very jarring to me when she wanted to be a murder doll. You know, every parent wants their little girl to be a princess or something for Halloween, generally. And then you realize, you know what, Halloween isn't about just being what your parents want you to dress up as, or what every other little girl in the zip code is dressing up as. And it certainly wasn't anything provocative or anything like that. It was scary as hell. Many of you may remember the pictures of her when she was a ghost girl. I think the next year, a couple years later, she was a ghost girl. And I remember taking her to the school pageant, like the school Halloween fair at the high school where her siblings attended. And people, high schoolers, and even high schoolers' parents were scared because she stayed in character. It was awesome. She'd walk around and people would say, "Nice costume." And she goes, "It's not a costume." And they would just kind of be like, "Okay, all righty then," and walk away. And you could tell they were peeing themselves because of this little ghost girl. Maybe she really was a ghost girl. I even said, "Who are you talking to?" There's nobody standing there. Just to rub it in. But I think Halloween is about creativity. Sometimes it's about bad taste. Sometimes people exercise bad taste, and there's nothing we can do about it. But to pressure a manufacturer who's in the business of making money, and if they're selling these costumes, isn't the best way to nail this issue to not buy the costumes? I mean, how many people are dressing up as sexy Native Americans every year? I mean, how many people do you see at costume parties dress like sexy Native Americans? I don't go to Halloween parties, but when I used to in my younger days, I never saw anybody dressing like that. I'd see a lot of the slutty Disney characters, and it made me sad, especially when they were young girls, youngish girls, teenagers and post-teens and stuff like that. It made me sad to see them dress up like that. But you should have free will. You should have free will. What about the costumes that aren't sexy but are still offensive? There are costumes out there that are deemed as offensive. Priests, nuns. There's probably Mormon costumes. I bet if you Google right now, there's a Mormon costume you could wear. Look at the Book of Mormon. Has made, hundreds of millions of dollars, if not billions by now. And that's highly offensive. I mean, it really is. I mean, they would never make the Book of Mormon. Can you imagine if they called it the Quran and they made fun of Muslims? I mean, nobody would ever put that on stage because they'd be afraid of getting killed by radicals. They'd be afraid of being beheaded in the alleyway by the stage door if they did something like that. But they know Mormons are kind of peaceful people and they're not going to hurt anybody. I mean, that's the honest-to-God truth. I mean, that's why they went after the Book of Mormon. They didn't go after the Quran. I want to see those a-holes who did the Book of Mormon do the Quran next and see if they don't fear for their lives around the world when they travel about trying to do publicity tours. But anyway, everybody can be offended by something. And, maybe nurses are offended by the slutty nurse outfits. Those have been around for decades. I remember those when I was a kid. I remember that when I was a kid going into costume shops and seeing like the slutty doctor and the slutty nurse and the slutty this and the slutty firefighter and I mean, isn't that offensive in a way when you think about it, that firefighting involves oftentimes going into burning buildings and saving children and saving people and saving animals, and you know what I mean? Isn't that offensive to kind of reduce firefighting or police work to mini skirts and fishnet stockings and stilettos? I mean, police don't dress like that. They're trying to keep law and order. They're trying to put the fires out, literally and figuratively. I mean, maybe that's insulting to them. Maybe the sexy nurse costumes are offensive to those who work in the ERs, especially pediatric nurses who are dealing with burn victims and things like that. I mean, what do they think of those costumes? So anyway, you don't have a right to not be offended. I hate to say it. You don't have a right to not be offended. You know what? I've decided to, it's a Sunday, and I've decided to make this a free podcast because I'm in a generous mood. Even though my free podcasts have never, ever, ever led to one single solitary person joining the podcast, I'm going to do it anyway. This is a free podcast, and I hope if you like what you heard, you will pay $1 a month, for God's sakes. That won't pay for the foam on the top of your Starbucks. $1 a month won't pay for the foam on your $7 lattes at Starbucks. So kick in $1 a month. Join the podcast at patreon.com/Spencer Hughes. Think of it as a early trick-or-treat present for you here, the free podcast. It's the Spencer Hughes Podcast and Adventures, and I appreciate that you're listening, and I appreciate it even more if you sign up. Patreon.com/Spencer Hughes.